Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Wisdom and Influence podcast here at Cornerstone University. And we have a very special guest, a wonderful friend of the university, one of our President's Fellows. Please help me to welcome Tudor Dixon.
Thank you.
Tudor, thank you for being with us. And I'm so grateful you're here with us on this podcast. I've been on your podcast a number of times.
I know.
Your world famous podcast. Thank
I'm
you.
in the hot seat
no,
now.
I don't know about that, but thank you so much for being here and for your friendship to the university and your wonderful conversation with our students this morning and in chapel. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh, it's been great to be here. The students are so engaged, which I love. They're very chatty.
Well, it was great to see a good line of students to see you after chapel, to talk with you, pictures and so on. That was great. So thank you for being here.
Yes.
You know what? So many things you shared this morning. I want to tee up for our conversation. But I think one of the most beautiful things, and you said it both in the morning with our President Fellow students when you met with the 25, 30 students and you shared your journey with them, and also you said it in chapel. And it's this beautiful part of your story that applies to all of us. Really, we're on a journey, and our journeys are all different. And God is at work if we let Him be at work.
Yes.
Right? Can you tell us more about that? Because sometimes I find young people in college really struggling with calling.
Yeah.
What am I supposed to be doing?
Right.
You know, does this matter what I've gone through and all these things? But you really, I think, summed up so beautifully. It's a journey, God's involved, and if we let Him, it's amazing.
Well, I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to be when I grow up. So that I'm still on that part of the journey with them. But I do think that as you get through part of your own journey, you look back and you say, those things that felt so hard in the moment were building me to the next moment. And that's what I kind of wanted them to understand, is that as you've seen these hardships, you can't get to God knows you can't do the next thing without having gone through that. And you'll look back and you'll say, that happened because I was going to do this. And even the girls this morning that said to me, you know, how did you handle being attacked? How did you handle what that was going to be? And there were things that when I was younger in my career, you know, I had attacks within my career. I had attacks within friendships. And those were significant that were meaningful to me at the time. And I thought, why? Why would you put me through this? There is a lesson in that, and that's what I want people to understand, especially young people to understand, that as you are going, why? Help me understand you are looking toward God, and you are not looking toward the people around you, because He's going to take you through that. Yeah,
the looking to God part is so critical. You said something that really resonated, and I've been thinking about it ever since you said it in chapel. And I asked my son this with some of his friends. I remember last year I asked him, he was a senior in high school, and I said to him, our youngest, what is it that you and your friends talk about at times? And he said, well, I can't give you the details. It's all secret between friends. I said, that's fine, but give me the high level, the executive report, right? And he said, no, we really talk a lot about finding someone that loves us, find the right person that loves us, a spouse and family, and then finding something that's really meaningful to do, right? That sense of calling and so on. And you said something this morning that I thought it was beautifully put, and when David encounters Goliath and how the armies train a certain way, but it's not the way God trained him and prepared him. And I thought, wow, it's just so well put, how God prepares people in different ways. And if it's God preparing you, that's what you need.
Yeah.
Right? So share with us and our students and listeners about that part of the sort of calling in our lives and what you've gone through. You've had an incredible career and so much more to do that you're going to accomplish, I'm sure of it, in National Spotlight in Michigan, so many things in what you've done. But that preparation of God, how does it work? How has it worked in your life? What advice would you give to our students and listeners?
Yeah, so especially with the race, I think going into that, I didn't know what that was going to be like at all. You know, I'd been in manufacturing, and then for a very short period of my life, I'd been in the media, but I was at a network that was just starting out. So there were a lot of, you know, mistakes being made, not mistakes you have to make. And that's another thing you have to know. You have to make mistakes to get better, right? You can't avoid mistakes your whole life. And so part of that, there were days that were just so hard. And it was like, you know, camera equipment goes out or the guest doesn't come and you just have to be on camera and you feel kind of silly, you know? And I remember a guy at the time saying to me, this is preparing you for something. I know this is frustrating, but know that when you have been at the beginning of something and you have seen the hardest times, it's getting you ready for something you don't know you're about to do. And that didn't seem possible. Like, oh, this is out of my comfort zone. I've never been in this media world. I've always been in a business setting. And then you go into the politics world and you're constantly having things thrown at you. Everything is kind of on the fly. You're trying to react quickly. You're trying to figure out how to react. And that moment, I immediately fell back on those days that were challenging when the camera's on, you're live on TV, everything kind of falls apart and you're the one holding it together. But really, it's a message of, it's not you. It wasn't me alone, and I was never alone on any of these journeys. It was always God with me, and I always felt confident because I knew whatever happened, He's there. So as young people go through and they go, oh my gosh, I lost my job, and now I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what that next journey is going to be. It might be something totally different, but I will say that also my time in manufacturing helped me with my time in the media, because there's a lot you can fall back on that nobody knows about working in a steel foundry. But it's not just the steel foundry, it's like the whole culture of working in industry. You bring to a world that has never thought about industry. God had a plan throughout all of that.
One of the things that I think a lot of folks wrestle with today, Christians and non-Christians, and you discuss, especially in the morning with the President's fellow students, of 25, 30 students who were there. So I want to shift gears and talk about this, is the belief that you can't be a Christian and be involved in politics, right? You can't hold on to your faith with integrity and be involved in politics, right? And if you do say that you're a Christian, you're involved in politics, you're not a good Christian.
Right.
Right? And it's a perspective that's been around for centuries and centuries, that politics taints. And the minute you walk into that space, you're tainted. You're tainted. There's something suspicious about it. And you openly talked about just the corruption that exists, regardless whether it's Republican or Democrat. There's corruption and power and money, all those kinds of things. But share with us, please. You really, from what I've seen and what you've shared, were very deliberate in ensuring that you maintained your faith and your commitment to Jesus and what you were doing, but also be excellent in the political sphere. Right? So talk to us how you did those things. And to defend it, because it's possible to do, I think, but tell us.
It is. I think that, you go back to what Caesar's is Caesar's and what God's is God's. And in that, I think a lot of people took that as those two worlds have to be separate. And like Caesar is not of God, And so I don't want to be on the Caesar side.
Yeah, right.
But today is a little bit different, because I do think that God raises up the right people to manage government and take care of people. And every job, if you're a doctor, I sure as heck hope that my doctor is also going to go in there with a faith perspective too, So I don't think you separate God from your career, no matter what it is. But I think in government, we have seen in just these past few months a real change of our leaders being like, maybe it's okay to be open to saying, yeah, I am faithful. I do believe. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, he came out, and when he was going through his election to be Speaker, people were like, oh, this guy can't be Speaker because he's got this Christian worldview.
Right.
And that was, I think, an eye-opening moment for Christians in a way we weren't expecting. I think the media felt like they were going to make that statement, and the world and the country was going to go, how horrible that he would be living his life by the Bible. And yet Christians are still very powerful, and Christians went, what are you saying? You say he can't have a biblical worldview?
Yeah.
And it almost had the opposite effect of what the media expected it to be. I feel like that was kind of cracking that egg open, because as I shared with you, when I was first running, I was told, don't ever mention your faith.
Yeah, right.
You will never win over the youth.
And it was just simple what you said, that I prayed about the decision, and that caused people or that individual to be alarmed that you prayed about this decision.
That was it. I'm telling you, it was like a 15-minute discussion asking why are you running? And then I said, and we prayed about it. And that at the end, she went back to that. Don't ever tell anybody you prayed about something. That's a turnoff to young people. Well, I'm at this university. I don't see that as a turnoff. I think a lot of young people understand that they need to be led by God. That is your North Star. That is how you navigate life. The Word of God is a living document. And you go through there. And the beauty of that is no matter when you read the Bible, it shows you different things. It shows you what you need at that time. So the speaker has this great resource right there trying to lead him through what he needs to do for this country. And we've seen that as we've seen this administration come in and be like, okay, you know what? Now we can be a little bit more defensive of what we want to see happening in the world with peace, with the hostages coming home. And then, of course, we saw Charlie assassinated. And it's funny how God works in situations like that. I think we saw so many people that you look at just George Floyd in 2020 and you see the reaction to a death, a tragic death. I mean, all death is a tragedy. And you see that, and the reaction was so much anger and burning of buildings and hatred. And I think when Charlie was assassinated, it was such a stunning shock to the faith community. But for the people who watched the reaction, I think it was a bigger shock. Because the reaction was this overwhelming. J.D. Vance came out and said, I haven't talked about God this much in my political life ever.
Right.
All of a sudden, the scripture that he had recited at all of these events, sometimes I think that's the first time some of these people ever heard scripture. Yeah. You see a huge church service.
Or the forgiveness of the wife, which to me was one of the most powerful part of that service.
Yes.
Was the forgiveness piece.
Yes.
Which is unexpected today.
Right, exactly. Right? That is totally opposite of what we've seen from the other side. The other side says, don't forgive. The side, and I'm talking about the side, like the good and the evil. And you see this battle, and students have said to me, if I get involved in faith, then I don't want to be attacked. And I think it's interesting because if you care about your children, if you care about the future, which I hear from this younger generation all the time, like I got to be careful with the water and everything. If you care about the future, then don't worry about Satan attacking, because that's who you're worried about. If you're worried about someone attacking you for being strong in your faith, it's not a person, it's not an individual, it's not a political party. Yeah. It is darkness. So you shine the light, And that, I think, has been one of the great, powerful things that we've seen with faith and politics in the past few months since we saw Charlie assassinated, and the celebration of who he was and his boldness in speaking out and speaking for the Lord. And now you have so many young people that are like, you know what, I have a good experience. I can speak to my knowledge of Scripture as well.
I've heard this. I've been in churches where conversations about either politics or cultural events of the day are very real. The pastors and leaders will talk about them. And then I've been in churches, even here in West Michigan, where that's never talked about. I mean, you could be having some horrific thing happen that week in the culture and politics, and you'd never know it from being in church. Yeah. And it's made me ponder and wonder why. Right? As to how is it that some will talk about it and engage it, regardless of what side of the aisle they're on, they're engaging it. There are others who say, we're not going to talk about it at all.
Yeah.
Then I've had here at Cornerstone, my first year, I met with probably about 130 pastors that first year here at Cornerstone. We'd have lunches or breakfast and meet pastors, groups of 8 to 12. We did a number of those. And then we did a small survey of pastors that first year, and how can we reach out to you? How can we help you as a university? How can we serve your congregations? And one of the top reasons, one of the top answers was, we need a place that can help us prepare and talk about the culture with our congregations. We just don't know how to. And our seminaries have not taught us how to do that. And frankly,
Interesting.
what's happening now, it's so beyond what seminaries could teach us. How do we do that? That's the reason why we started Wisdom. One of the reasons why Wisdom Conversations at Cornerstone, you were just there a couple of weeks ago, and so many other things. How do we do this? So you've been and you are in the trenches of public life. And I can understand why some pastors would be hesitant to. They don't know how to.
Right.
So they're afraid to taint everything, or maybe they have very strong opinions that it's already tainted, so you never talk about it. And yet, what I've discovered, and I think you have, in what you're doing, I know you have in being here at Cornerstone, the young people want to know.
Yeah.
They want to talk about it. They're looking for it. Someone has to do it.
Yes.
So what advice would you give us? If pastors are listening to this, what advice would you give to them about how to engage these really serious topics?
I think that there is a different role for a pastor than, for example, you see a Charlie or an influencer, a social media influencer. There's a certain amount of shock and awe that goes along with the influencer world, and that's not a good thing. That's the part that brings in the downloads and brings in the money, and it's
and the animosity, the antagonism sometimes.
That's right.
Right.
So the pastor falls into a totally different category because the pastor needs to bring truth in a way that is coming in kind of like a loving capsule, right? And I know a lot of pastors would say, well, I don't want to shield you, but there is a way, I think all of our pastors would say that they know there's a way to deliver a truth that isn't a punch in the eye. And there are times when it has to be a punch in the eye, but I think that at this point in culture, we're trying to have deep conversations, and it doesn't have to be, making fun. Like if you look at the influencer side, it's like making fun of someone, the guy who worked at the White House who was stealing luggage. I mean, just dressed very silly, and I can say that was ridiculous. But this is also something that's happening in our culture that is accepting this idea that a man can be a woman and vice versa. And our pastor has been very open with the fact that this is just not possible. And that there is a time to explain the world is powerful. There's power in the world. There's power over our young people's minds. But the lies are what take you down. And these are not truth. This is not God's truth, but it's not truth at all. This is experimentation that they're doing on kids right now. There's not evidence that this is a good thing for children or families. You've got all these people that come out of these worlds that they say, I was in this lie. I had transitioned. I've come back, and I wish I could tell people what that really was like, but this community stops you. I think that the church is a place for kind truth, And when I say that, I don't mean gentle. Like, it is important to be firm in the truth. So when our pastor comes out and says this, he says, we don't believe that women can be men. That doesn't mean that we don't want to talk to people who feel that way. Actually, those are the people that we want to help, But if you're not reaching out to people, they're lost forever. It's not an easy place for pastors to be. You've got social media, you've got porn, you've got these, the transitioning, the gender ideology. You've got so much socialism. You've got so many things where it's like we believe that the world is a better place if there is, it's a utopia. Well, okay, that doesn't exist anymore. So where's the truth? Who's going to speak it if it doesn't come from the church?
Right, the pastor in the church play a pivotal role. I want to ask you to talk with us about next year we're celebrating America's birthday, the big 250, right? And I just talked to some of our students here at Cornerstone just last week over lunch, asking them about America's birthday, and a lot of the conversation in the culture where there are clear sides on this question. We should celebrate it, we should denigrate it, right? And so I asked them, what do you all think? And they said to me, we really need to be talking about that. We get bombarded with stuff all the time about the country, about these two things, right? And how do we have wisdom about that? And so I want talk with us as Christians, right? And as you have been involved, not just in media and business, but also in public life and politics, now in your podcast, as a Christian, how do we work through that? How do we encourage young people and those wrestling with the reality of the flaws, but you can't deny the beauties either?
Yeah.
And how do we wrestle with those two things? Because there are some in our culture and even in our churches who want to denigrate it all. Failed, so on, and throw it all away, right? And so how do we wrestle with that? I mean, you have children, I have children, we have young people here at this university. What kind of advice do we give to them and share with them about, here's a biblical perspective on our country, on the nation, on what it means to be a citizen, right? What would you say?
I mean, what a beautiful country it is that you can come out and say you hate the country and you don't get kicked out. I mean, because that's not what the kids in China are seeing. And I guarantee you there are people that hate living there. And
the pastors just rounded up in China last week or so. A number of pastors rounded up.
It's not free.
Right.
They can't speak the word of God. So that alone is to be celebrated, that church is free here. Churches are free to speak whatever they want to speak, and every religion is welcome in this country. And I think we are very spoiled. So spoiled in this country. I mean, you know this. You obviously have experience in the alternative. So I think it's very easy for us to go, well, it's not exactly how we want it. Of course it's not. God didn't promise us. He doesn't say this is where he wants us to stay forever. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be so amazing that you don't want to move on, because heaven is a beautiful place, and that's our forever. But if there were any place I had to be on earth, it would be a country that allows you to speak up, that allows you to change. You don't have a king. You can change who's in office. You can go out and vote. I can go door to door. I can tell people my story, share what I think is important to them, that's important to me. I can try to win over their hearts and minds for what I think is a good cause. That's my freedom. I get to do that. If somebody in my neighborhood wants to change the bylaws, we can fight about it. We can have that conversation. You live in a country where the only reason you are saying, I don't know if I love this country, is because someone's been allowed to tell you it might not be great. In another country, that couldn't happen. But it's also because there is a freedom and a forgiveness in Christianity, and that's the basis of which our government was grown from. And people can argue that, but it is true that if you look at a Christian country, and people say, oh, it's not a Christian country. Well, it was founded in the basis of Christian Judeo values. And if you look at those values, they're forgiving, just like what you said about Charlie's wife. They are empathetic. And some people will say, oh, it's toxic empathy because people are too empathetic and they want to allow everybody to do everything. It is based in we trust you because you will be led by God. And we allow people from any religion to be here. But if you look at countries where they have strict religions that are not religions of forgiveness, they are also not countries where women have many rights. They're not countries where alternative groups have many rights. They're countries that people are under attack. So ultimately, I think that's a great discussion for people to have. I think it's a beautiful place to have it because it's one of the only countries in the world where you could say, we're turning 250 years old. Should we spit on that? Or should we celebrate?
Yeah, man, celebrate.
Yeah.
Another question I have for you. You've had an incredible career already, and like I said earlier, many more wonderful things to come. I'm sure of it, Tudor. But I think of, a mom, businesswoman, media, podcast, ran for governor of Michigan. I've spoken to a number of young people here at Cornerstone the last several years, and before I came to Cornerstone, and I realized the apprehension that young people have to fail and to risk, now more than ever.
Yeah.
Just spoke to someone in the last 30 days who's already out in a recent college graduate, already out in the market, and this individual shared with me, I'm paralyzed. I said, what do you mean you're paralyzed? Well, Dr. Moreno, I'll tell you why. I'm afraid of the risk.
Yeah.
Everywhere I see risk. And I'm not sure I want to continue with that. There's so much uncertainty in the world, so much risk in the world. And what I've seen in this person, I've seen in countless others, the fear of moving forward, the fear of making decisions, this paralysis, so they stay where they are and they don't do anything. It's a safe space, safe place, right? When I see your journey thus far, that's not what's there. now,
people around me would ask me to be a little safer.
But you think about all the things that you have started and done, high risk things.
Yeah.
Hard things, right? Challenging things. And here you are thinking about what's the next one? Lord, show me, right? And I thought, how do I bottle that up and give it to a lot of students who are really sort of stagnated and paralyzed because of uncertainty, almost as if they've come to expect you should never have risk in life.
Yeah.
You should never have that in life. So what advice would you give?
But let's be thankful for those people, because if they were all people that just took risks all the time, it would be a world of chaos. So I do say we are grateful for the fact that we're all different. And we all have different personalities, because if it were just a bunch of tutors running around, who knows what would happen.
But you know what I mean. It's such a paralysis for some.
Yes, absolutely. So I do think that there is a world where also there's a big fear of embarrassment, and like this will be permanent. And the permanent record, when we were kids, I don't know if your parents ever said this will be on your permanent record if you do this. Like, where is this record? Where does it exist?
Right.
And there actually really wasn't one for us. But these
it was
kids,
your parents. That was a permanent record.
That's right. Yeah. But these kids, they have a permanent record because everything they do is public. You can stalk someone. You can look up all their information. You can find out everything they've done. Their history is right at your fingertips. And I think that is so much scarier today for young people to go, what if I do this and then it's recorded for eternity and I can't get past it? Because you haven't had to get past anything. You're so young, you haven't had any challenges. But I would also say, I was telling the kids this morning, one of my best meetings I had was the guy who sat with me and said, well, when you run your next race, because this one you'll lose. And I was like, I don't like this conversation. Why are we talking about this? But his point was, there's so much that comes out of failure. And I will tell you, after another meeting, after I had lost the election, and I was asked to go and speak, and it was probably early January. So the election was in November. Just a few months later, a group asked me to come and speak, and I was talking to one of the older advisors I had on my team. And I said, I don't know why they would want me to come and speak. I feel like I just let them all down. And he said, look, you'll walk in there and you'll be able to tell them all the hard things that you went through. He said, if you won, you would walk in there and think you were the best thing ever, and you really wouldn't be able to share anything with them. You can only grow through those failures. So when I see people who are apprehensive, if they have an idea, they need to understand that it's not really their idea. Like, that was planted from a seed from God. If it truly is your calling, then don't be afraid of that, because even if it doesn't go the direction you are expecting, there's a lesson that you're supposed to go through in that. And this is a country where you can rebuild so easily. And the faith community is so strong in that. I was just looking up how powerful is the Christian faith. And there was a study done in Louisiana, in New Orleans, after Katrina hit. And it was looking at the areas where people had the highest church membership. So from 2005 to 2010, followed church membership. The areas with the highest church membership recovered the fastest. And the people said that they felt always safe. No matter what, they had a place to go get there. It was like a home base. We knew there'd be toilet paper. We knew there'd be shelter. We knew there would be coffee. We knew we were good, because our home base was church. And then more entrepreneurs bloomed out of that area, because those people said, we have to rebuild. We trust you to rebuild. Yeah. And they started to come around each other. So really, if you are paralyzed, then surround yourself with your faith family. That's how you will be strong through it.
One of the things that you're involved in the media world a lot, and I think almost more than politics, that's a tough world too,
Yeah.
right?
It is.
And so, one of the things that I think all of us are wrestling with media, regardless of where it's coming from, is having the discernment to understand and to discern what is true and what's false, right?
Yes.
With wisdom, because there are so many sources of information, so many spins, so many coming your way. I mean, from all these sectors. And then you add social media to that and alternative
And
sources of
AI.
information, AI, right? I was watching the other day a video and I sent it to my son. I said, have you seen this? He said, it's AI generated, Dad. I'm like, what do you mean? He said, I can tell. Look, I never saw it. It looked like a real video to me.
I know.
He said, it's not real, Dad. Here's how I can tell. So he knew. I was grateful that he knew. I didn't, but he could tell, right? But that's a real challenge. You're in the media space in some significant ways. How have you learned to discern and growing your discernment with media? Because we have to have it. We have to utilize it wisely. But how do we do that?
You make a few mistakes. So that is, you can't let those mistakes get you down, because that's how I learned. I repost something and everybody attacks you and goes, oh, you idiot. That's not true. I mean, it's true. It's this simple, and that's embarrassing, but it's as simple as that. You do something and then you go, oh, well, I can't just trust. I have to be, when I see something that seems, oh, this is horrible, I should get multiple sources that are actually saying the same thing. But the AI thing is very scary because, it looks like the person, it seems like it's happening. My mom sent me something the other day. I'm like, Mom, this bear did not like this baby's face and get scared away by a cat. This is not, is not real.
By the way, that was not the video I sent to my son. Okay, by the way, but
she's going to kill me. But it does, it all seems so real. And I believe that that's mentioned in the Bible, that you won't be able to tell what's real and fake and what's not real. And that is really scary to me when I see what they're capable of doing with AI, making it look like someone says something and, two politicians are in a debate and then they actually start fist fighting. You're like, what? This is not true. It is a matter of also not staying in one space. I have a lot of people that stay in one social media, like Twitter or whatever we call it, X or Reddit, and you're getting two really different messages there. Leave that. Once you see something that harms your soul in some way and you go, oh my gosh, I'm so fired up about, because those places are just to fire you up. Once you become fired up, then leave that space. Do research. In the past, you didn't just, there was no social media, but you didn't just go, oh, I can only cite one story. These are university students. You require them to cite more than once, right? So you
many times. Yes.
So use that knowledge that you can't trust the first thing. You have to have multiple viewpoints saying one thing, and you really figure it out quite quickly once you've posted something that embarrasses you.
I want to shift and talk about politics. I think about midterm elections coming. I think about the state of Michigan. I'm not a Michigander. I'm brand new still. My 5 years here, still learning a lot, but just watching how things have played out in the last 4 or 5 years. But then I'm also watching something that I think everyone's paying attention, which is the New York City mayoral race, right? And not just how it's playing out there, but that sort of similar races or possibilities in other cities, where all of a sudden socialism or communism, or whatever we want to call it, or creeping communism, which is socialism in many ways, is somehow a viable option for people.
Oh, I don't know if you've heard, it's never been done right.
Yeah, right. No, I'll never forget, my very first class in graduate school was a class on Karl Marx and communism, and the professor was a communist. And he said, capitalists never gave us a chance. This is what he would say, right? So it was. I remember thinking, and laughing at that. But having said that, all of a sudden, it's a viable option for people in certain cities, right? And I've sensed that even here in parts of Michigan, in some cities, it's beginning to be an attractive option. What has happened?
Well, I think Karl Marx is kind of like a lot of these college students. He was like a perpetual student. His parents were not not uber wealthy, but they were wealthy enough that he could go out and be a perpetual student, so he came up with a bunch of theories. He was not a worker, but he looked at the workers and said, oh, they must not be happy. He had no idea, he didn't talk to them. He just assumed. He went and looked at it and he said, this is not a good society. Now, suddenly, people can get paid for their work. So times start to change during Karl Marx's life, and industrialism takes off. And then people get paid to be working in industry instead of, working at home. And the people earning the wage are going, oh, we can actually make a wage now. We can start to afford things. Our life is changing. But Karl Marx looked at the owners of those companies and said, their life is changing faster, and that's not fair. So he didn't care that the worker was saying, I've always been a different class, but now I can choose my class. I can actually get a job and I can increase my own personal wealth. He didn't look at that. He said they're not being treated fairly. He got a bunch of other people who are also not workers, and they said, these people aren't treated fairly. Then they infiltrated the workers. Then they got them to go, oh my gosh, should we be unhappy? That this was working. It works. We see it in the United States. Capitalism works. The reason it works is because that big business owner, who you think is just very wealthy, has provided income for all those workers who, at that time, had never had income before. They have all of a sudden a kind of freedom. Then you have somebody like that here in the United States, Jeff Bezos. Oh, he should give us all of his money, but how many Amazon warehouses do we have?
Sure.
Look, he's not my favorite guy, but he's a job creator. You cannot lie. Yeah. He's going to space.
And our packages are delivered same day sometimes.
I know, it's unbelievable. I don't love it because
they add significant value, but what's become so attractive? That's why I'm a puzzle. I mean, I have a friend who lives in New York City, and they're very attracted to the socialist piece. And I said, have you seen what could happen to your city?
And I think that is where the malicious empathy comes into effect. And so when you hear people talking about empathy being dangerous, I think it is because people can play on your empathy and tell you, this is really bad. You have the power to change this, and it could be fair for everyone. They're not telling you the full story. They don't understand that it can't actually be that way. For some reason, they don't look back at history books. If it could be that way, humankind does, I think, always want to do the good thing. There would be enough people that would have succeeded at socialism. It cannot be that way. Ultimately, everyone suffers. But when have they seen that in our lifetime? They haven't. America is very spoiled. It's the good times make weak men make bad times make strong men. We are just getting off of strong men. Now we have weak men. They have been very spoiled. They are trying to raise up a bad system that will create bad times. It's an age-old theory. Do we have to go through this? I hope the whole country doesn't. But is it sad to see that we have the economic center of the world that will now go into a socialist experiment? I'm glad we have term limits.
And your point then is that they're playing off certain things and manipulating and not sharing the whole story. And that's what I've discovered as well when I speak to my friend there and others, that they're not aware of all the consequences of all this being done. Certain things sound so amazing, so good, it must be good, but no thought about that. And the alarm, and this is why even here at Cornerstone University, in our business school of business, we're taking this very seriously, because we know that good education, thoughtful education about economics and free market and free enterprise makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
The data and the information can't lie.
Yeah.
But so it's only a part of the story that's being told.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So talk to us about the state of Michigan, because I have a colleague who just moved here from another state in the union, and said to me, and I did not know this. He said, there are a lot of dormant evangelicals in Michigan. I said, what do you mean dormant evangelicals? He said, Michigan was the second place where the Jesus Revolution took off. It happened in California. That's the first place, and then it happened here in West Michigan. This is why you have all the publishing houses here and all the Christians here. He said, but these evangelicals have gone dormant for a long, long time. That's what he said to me. And I thought, And then I looked at the political scene and I thought maybe he's right. Because there are certain issues on the ballot that I thought to myself, with the number of churches we have here and Christians and Christian publishing houses, it should have never gone that direction. So something happened. Either people didn't show up, didn't care, didn't think they should. That in the last 3 or 4 years, you know it better than I do. So help us to think about the future of Michigan and evangelicals in these real, very serious issues, right to life and abortion. That's one of them, right? The sanctity of marriage, you know, the transgender piece. There are things that are biblical and very serious things that if we don't pay attention to could really hurt the state and hurt our communities. So give us a sense of where we're headed here.
Well, I think as you've seen church membership decline, you've seen that happen. I think it's the next generation that has said, you know, we don't need the church. We can do this on our own. And just in the last few years, that has changed. You're seeing young men go back to church, which, you know, I think that if we could ask God to do one thing, it would probably be if we had to return them at different times, return the men first and let them lead the women. But right now, men are very lonely and they feel like there's not a woman out there for them because women have been taught the lie that you can't rely on someone else. You can't have a partner in life. You have to be very independent.
Or you even need one.
Right.
Right.
I mean, that's what you talked about at the wisdom conversation. I thought that was fantastic when the woman who was speaking about feminism said, this has been a lie to women. You've taken away what they naturally desire. So I do think that West Michigan had been this place where we were really on fire for the Lord. And then when I came to West Michigan 20 years ago, and we joined a church, and the church was kind of like we don't talk about anything bad. Like if you have a problem. And I didn't really realize this was happening. And then a pastor came to our church that was from out of state. And I said to his wife, you ever notice that like you don't talk about anything negative ever? Like if you're struggling with something, she said, it's only here. And I don't know if that's a local cultural thing, but I've seen pastors that are trying to break that.
Yeah.
And I think that is, you can get into a situation where it's like, oh, we don't want controversy, so we're just going to keep all of the negative things out of here. But the church is for a place. The church is where all the sick people come, right? This is the area where you get well. You don't come here when you're perfect. You can't walk in the door perfect. That's not how church works. You don't walk in the door and go, oh, I'm broken. None of these people look like me. I've got to run the other direction. That would be a disaster. We wouldn't have any Christians, you know? And if people are pretending that, which I think for a long time they were pretending that. I mean, you saw that movie that they came out with, Holland, where the ad for the movie is like, I'm from Holland, Michigan.
I saw that movie and I thought, wow. I mean, it made me pause, right? I thought someone didn't have a good experience in Holland. That's why they made this movie, right?
I know. That's what I couldn't watch it all. I could only I watched the first part of it. I was like, this is creepy.
Yeah, it is creepy. It was creepy.
But that's the impression, is that everybody has to have this perfect life. Well, that's not the church. The church is filled with broken people. So I do think that that's changing. I do think that that part, but I see the battle. It's not changing. It's changing if we want it to change. But I see the battle, and we were talking about it at lunch, that there are forces that are against anybody that is Christian or conservative. Yeah. I mean, even in Grand Haven, there's a restaurant right now that says, if you are a MAGA supporter, you're not welcome in our restaurant. They put a posting saying, don't come. And I think, wow, that's so opposite of what the Christian attitude is like, if you don't agree with my faith, then welcome, come and learn, come and sit with me. If you aren't perfect, come to the church, sit down. We have a book for you. We want to share it, you know? I think that that's important, that we remember that's who we are, and we're always inviting people.
Yeah, and you mentioned it a number of times. You know, one of the things I find interesting is that democracy, it has so many tensions pulling it apart, right? And you always hear individuals in government or public sphere speaking about the strength of our democracy or America is our diversity. That's a beautiful thing as long as it's working. And as long as you're able to actually sit down and have conversations,
Yeah.
right? Real conversations. Otherwise, it becomes a tension that pulls it apart. And so you mentioned that restaurant. We talked about this at Wisdom Conversations, and you were there, but with others, this whole new movement now where individuals see whether it's institutions or family or relationships through the lens of my personal identity. And if you don't serve my identity, you're done. I don't want you here.
Yeah.
Whether it's a mom or a dad or siblings or other extended family members or a church or friends, you are an agent of me,
Yeah.
right? And if you're not my right agent for my identity, I don't want you. I don't need you, right? And the destructiveness in families and churches and organizations, in restaurants, the thought that if you're that stripe American, we don't serve you food we don't want.
Right.
Right? How do we break through that? You had a wonderful example this morning of sitting with a number of Kamala Harris supporters.
Yeah.
And maybe you can share that with our listeners, which I thought was such a powerful story of how you did that to try to break through some of those things.
Yeah, we were at an event. Fox came out to Muskegon. They were having a breakfast with friends. There were a bunch of Harris supporters there. This was during the election. A bunch of Harris supporters there kind of hooting and hollering, making their voices heard.
Sure.
And then afterward, I said, I think I'm going to go talk to them. And my team was like, why would you do that? I'm like, I just want to see what we talk about, So I went and sat down. And it was great because they told me stories from their perspective as to why they believe certain things. And I can see that, and I'm like, okay, that's not my life story. That's not my experience. I'm glad I know that experience.
Sure.
I'm glad I have a different perspective on that. Let me tell you my experience. Let me share what I think. And we talked for like 45 minutes. At the end, the one woman looked at me. She said, well, what's your name? And I was like, it's Tudor. And she goes, well, not that Tudor. Oh, that's not your name. I said, oh, yeah. That's why I didn't lead with my name. Yeah, I am.
Right.
That's who I am. And her jaw just hit the table, and she looked at me. She very seriously said, "I hated you."
I hated you.
And you turned out to be pretty normal. And,
Wow.
And I thought in that moment, I'm like, that is such a powerful statement because too many times we hate each other. We haven't even met. We haven't given each other a chance. And instead of trying to change my mind, if she had known who I was, instead of sitting with me like she did so graciously and tried to change my mind and gave me her perspective and let me into her world, if she had known who I was, she would never have done that.
Yeah, right.
But it really, I learned something. I'm grateful to her still to this day that she took that time.
It's such a powerful story because I think so often as we lead first with our faith. I'm a Christian. That shuts doors many times.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you don't lead with your name. You knew why. In the public sphere, we lead with other things. And then I'm mindful of, I've shared this story oftentimes. My wife loves to share the gospel with people on the plane when she travels. She does it often. And she said, I'll never forget this because it reminded me of that story and something else that you shared about the seeds that we plant in conversations and how seeds bring fruit. It takes time, but seeds are planted. And she shared the gospel with someone in a plane one time, and he turned out to be a Christian. And then she said to my wife, he said, thank you for sharing with me. And then he said this, I am a man in whom 1,000 seeds were planted before I came to faith.
Oh,
1,000 seeds. That's how he put it.
that's an incredible story.
Right? And I have never forgotten that story. It made me pause. To your point, even now, the importance of figuring out a way to enter conversations because seeds are planted and you just don't know. And God brings people at different times to water them, and someone reaps the fruit.
Yes.
But the seed's been planted. So that story you shared was really powerful. I thought, wow, you went to them and you had the discernment to not leave the name.
Yeah.
And then here it is, right? And I just thought to myself, that's a really sound piece of advice. How do we enter a conversation without bearing our initials and credentials right up front?
That's what one of the students asked this morning. Like, how do we share the gospel with people? How do we share our worldview, our biblical worldview, without getting shunned, without getting kicked out? And I said, you don't always lead with the Bible because sometimes that's scary. sometimes it's easier for someone to see your inner joy. And then you start to say, hey, so I go to church. You figure out how to work that into the conversation. If you start the conversation with someone who's hesitant and say, you need to be reading this. Oh, I don't want homework. I don't want you to give me a job.
Right.
It's like, this is actually free. You can just come to this well and drink.
Yeah.
And you can feel the same way.
Yeah.
How do you show people?
Yeah. I see, we talked about the fear of uncertainty and risk. The fear of rejection is real. But one of the things that I've seen just in the last 4 or 5 years is hearing your speeches and conversations in the very intense environment you were in 21 and 22, right? And the importance of humility. Not as a weakness, because oftentimes people see it as a weakness. And in the ancient world, it was always seen as a weakness. You can't be humble as a leader. You have to be a conquering hero. You have to be very triumphalist about things. But then the importance of humility is not just a virtue, but a strength, right? So talk to us about that in your work, in your public life, in your presentations, your speeches, in some very intense campaign moments, right, in the media. That importance of humility is a source of strength and stability.
Yeah, well, I found that when you are open and you're truthful about who you are, and you're truthful about your downfalls too, that's very humbling when you come out and you're like, okay, I screwed this up. I had this problem. But it draws people to you as well, because they see that you're willing to say, it's not me. I'm not able to do this. I can't do this in my own power. And I think those times have changed. And maybe it's easier for a woman too, to say, there's something bigger that has surrounded me. But that taking yourself out of the equation is also hard, especially in this business, because you are the product, right? I've been in sales before. It wasn't selling me. It was selling a product. In the case of politics, you are the product and you have to sell yourself constantly. That can get in your head, and I think I shared with you one of the first conversations that I had when I was thinking of running was with a politician here in Michigan. And as I walked out the door, he said, don't let it seduce you. And I remember going, I have no idea what he means by that. Today, I have seen enough.
You've seen enough.
That I've seen people who it's about them, it's the cause has been lost. And that to me is why it is so important to constantly be in conversation with God. What is the plan? Is this me? Is this you? Is this us together? What am I supposed to be doing? If you are constantly questioning if he is on board with you, it will keep you from thinking you are doing this in your own power.
Tudor, thank you for all you have done and do and will do, and thank you for being a part of Cornerstone University. I'm so grateful you're here.
Thank you.
And I can share that on behalf of our entire staff and team and our students who love what you shared this morning. Thank you for all you do, and the Lord continue to bless you, and thank you for being on our podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been a great day.
Thank you.